Hey, you! Welcome back to Secrets with Maeve, the space for the conversations we usually keep to ourselves. I'm Maeve. Today we're talking about something I know so many of us struggle with in silence: 5 signs she just slept with someone else. Let's get into it. If you've ever felt that quiet knot in your gut after an argument or over a suspicious night out she's had, let me tell you, you're not paranoid. You're sensing a truth most men refuse to face. And the worst pain isn't being betrayed. The real agony is kissing lips that just touched another man, holding a body that no longer belongs to you, and not even knowing it. Today, I'll share with you 5 signs women reveal when they've just slept with someone else. Signs men miss until it's too late. Now listen closely. Some of this will sting. I won't lie. But once you see it, you'll stop being your own accomplice. And if you lean in a little closer and pay attention till the end, I promise you'll have more clarity. You'll stop wasting nights trying to guess, and you'll start making decisions from strength. You'll regain dignity, and more importantly, you'll stop investing in a relationship that's already moved on. If you're new to my channel, my name is Mary Smith, and this is Mindful Senior Living. Now, before we go any further, I want to pause and speak directly to you, especially those of you who are over 50, who have already survived a divorce, a long marriage, or a relationship that slowly turned cold without ever officially ending. You are not a foolish man for wanting connection. You are not weak for loving deeply, and you are certainly not crazy for sensing when something feels off. There is a difference between paranoia and intuition. Paranoia screams, intuition whispers, and most men ignore the whisper until it becomes humiliation. What we're going to talk about today is not about turning you into a detective. It's not about creating suspicion where none exists. It's about learning how to read emotional shifts, behavioral changes, and relational patterns without losing yourself in the process. Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Betrayal rarely begins in the bedroom. It begins in energy. It begins in distance. It begins in small behavioral fractures that appear long before any confession. So take a breath with me. Ask yourself quietly, have I been feeling something change? Have I been overriding my own perception just to keep the peace? Let's begin. The first sign is what I call the cold silence of her body. The body tells the truth before words ever do. Neuroscience has shown us that the nervous system reacts to emotional shifts milliseconds before the conscious mind constructs a narrative. That means when intimacy changes, when touch feels different, when warmth disappears, your body often notices before your brain allows you to admit it. If you've been together for a while, you know her rhythms. You know how she reaches for you in the middle of the night. You know the difference between genuine exhaustion and emotional withdrawal. You know what it feels like when affection flows naturally. And you also know when it becomes mechanical. I once worked with a gentleman in his early 60s. Let's call him Robert. He told me, "Mary, she still kisses me, but it feels like she's completing a task." That sentence stayed with me. Completing a task. When intimacy turns into obligation, something has shifted emotionally, and here's the psychological piece. When a person forms a new attachment or experiences emotional or physical intimacy elsewhere, the brain releases bonding chemicals, oxytocin and dopamine, that create attachment loops. Those chemicals don't simply disappear when she walks back into your home. They create contrast. And that contrast can make previous intimacy feel muted or distant. Now, let me be clear. There are many reasons intimacy can cool: stress, health issues, hormonal changes, emotional conflicts, especially in relationships over 50. Physical shifts are real and valid, but here's the key difference. When stress is the cause, connection still exists beneath the fatigue. When emotional redirection is the cause, there is detachment. If she turns her face slightly away from your kiss, if her body stiffens instead of softening, if she says, "I'm tired," but scrolls her phone with alert energy for another hour, If the warmth you once felt now feels replaced by neutrality, notice, do not beg, do not interrogate, do not perform harder to win her back. I'm Sarah Johnson, host of The Female Touch. Instead of chasing, pull back your pursuit slightly. This is a powerful psychological exercise. When you reduce anxious chasing behavior, you create space for truth to reveal itself. A woman who still desires you emotionally will feel the shift and move closer. She'll ask what's wrong. She'll re-engage. She'll bridge the gap. If the silence deepens instead, that silence is information. And I want you to understand something deeply here. Your job is not to force warmth. Your job is to recognize when it's gone. Now, let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt genuinely wanted? Not tolerated, not accommodated, wanted. If that question stings, sit with it. This silence is where the truth lives. And if you're finding this conversation helpful already, I invite you to quietly tap the like button, not for the algorithm alone, but as a signal that you're ready to face truth. Now let's move into the second sign. I call this the cleansing ritual. It is a subtle but profound shift in baseline behavior, sudden over cleanliness that feels out of character, longer showers than usual, excessive perfume, clothing changes that don't match the day's events, laundry being handled with unusual urgency, a guarded purse, a phone that is suddenly never left unattended. This shift in privacy is a signal. Now, before we jump to conclusions, understand this. Behavioral changes matter more than behaviors themselves. If she has always been meticulous, that is baseline. But if something shifts abruptly paired with nervous energy or unusual secrecy, that shift deserves your undivided attention. It's about the patterns. Here's the psychological layer. Human beings carry sensory memory. Scent is one of the strongest triggers of memory and emotional recall. Research in neurobiology shows that smell connects directly to the limbic system. When someone experiences intimacy, scent and touch become encoded together. So when someone excessively scrubs, sprays, or erases, sometimes it's about more than hygiene. It can be about removing psychological residue. Again, I say can be, not always, but patterns tell stories. Your intuition is picking up on a narrative that hasn't been spoken yet. Ask yourself, is this new? Is it paired with unexplained absences? Does she become defensive if you casually ask about her day? A healthy partner does not panic at neutral curiosity. Transparency is the default in a secure attachment. Defensiveness is a shield. Now here's how you respond with dignity. You do not explode. You do not accuse without evidence. You do not snoop obsessively. You observe. You gather your own truth. You remain the rock that doesn't move just because the tide is shifting. This is your power. Recognize the patterns. Face the truth. I'm Sarah Johnson, and this is the path to emotional intelligence. Subscribe for more deep dives. Observation is power. Reactivity is weakness. There's an exercise I often give clients. For 2 weeks, shift into what I call calm data collection mode. I'm Sarah Johnson, host of The Female Touch. We're not looking to confirm betrayal. We're looking to confirm consistency. I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments before we dive deeper into tracking patterns. Track patterns privately. Energy before leaving. Energy upon returning. Changes in routine, shifts in intimacy, patterns reveal truth over time. And here's the uncomfortable question. Are you afraid of what you might confirm? Many men prefer confusion over clarity because clarity requires action. Now, before we continue, I want you to breathe again. This conversation is about strengthening your internal stability so that no matter the truth, you remain centered, because dignity is not about controlling her behavior. It's about controlling your response. Next, we explore something more psychologically complex: projection and the blame game. This is where many intelligent men get trapped. The third sign is when guilt quietly transforms into projection. It is a fascinating defense mechanism. It's also one of the most destructive inside relationships. Here's how it works. When someone feels internal conflict, the nervous system experiences stress. The brain looks for relief from shame. One of the fastest ways the mind relieves guilt is by redirecting responsibility. It becomes, "You are the reason I feel this way." Suddenly, you're not attentive enough, or you're too attentive, you're too quiet, or you talk too much. You folded the towel wrong, you breathed wrong, you exist wrong. Now, let me ask you something gently. Have you found yourself apologizing lately, but not really knowing what you did? That is not random. Projection often sounds like irritation that feels disproportionate to the event. The emotional charge is heavier than the situation calls for. Let me tell you about a client I worked with. I worked with a man in his late 50s, Daniel. For months, every minor disagreement escalated into accusations about his emotional distance. He was confused. He had been more present than ever, more attentive, more communicative. What he didn't realize was that his partner had emotionally checked out long before she physically did. Instead of confronting her own internal shift, she redirected the discomfort onto him. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. When someone's actions don't align with their identity, they experience mental discomfort. To reduce that, they reshape the narrative. If she sees herself as a good partner, but her behavior contradicts that, the mind will search for justification. Understanding this is the first step to reclaiming your peace. You are not responsible for her narrative, only yours. If this resonates, like and subscribe for more insights on Heil relationship psychology. I'm Sarah Johnson. You made me unhappy. You pushed me away. You weren't there for me. Sometimes those statements are valid. Relationships are complex. No one is perfect, but here's the distinction. Healthy conflict seeks resolution. Projection seeks escape. If you find yourself constantly defending your character rather than discussing a specific issue, pause, stop defending. I want you to try something powerful the next time blame feels misplaced. Calmly say, "I'm open to hearing what I've done wrong, but I won't accept being the villain for something I don't recognize." And then stop talking. Silence is psychologically uncomfortable for someone who is projecting. It removes the dance, it removes the emotional sparring, it removes the opportunity to deflect. When you stop over-explaining, you expose imbalance. Now, this is important. Do not weaponize silence. Use it as grounding. You are not trying to intimidate. You are refusing to absorb what doesn't belong to you. There is a tremendous difference. Let me ask you something deeper. Have you been shrinking yourself to avoid arguments? Have you been trying to fix things by becoming more accommodating? Have you been walking on eggshells in your own home? That slow erosion of self-respect is often more damaging than the betrayal itself. And here's what many men over 50 struggle with. You don't want to start over. You've invested years, shared history, built routines, maybe even blended families, so you tolerate emotional imbalance longer than you should. But understand this. Preserving peace at the cost of your dignity is not strength. It's fear, and fear makes you negotiable. If this is resonating with you, pause and reflect. Drop a comment below, not with accusations, but with awareness. Even writing, "I've felt this shift," can be a powerful step toward clarity. Now, let's move into the fourth sign, and this one is subtle. The body doesn't lie. Human beings leak truth through micro expressions, through breath patterns, through eye contact shifts, through subtle muscle tension. Research in behavioral psychology shows that emotional incongruence often appears in the body before it appears in words. A rehearsed explanation can sound smooth, but the nervous system still reveals tension. If you've lived beside someone for years, you know their baseline. You know their resting tone. You know how they respond when relaxed versus when guarded. So when something feels off, don't dismiss it immediately. Maybe she's unusually tense when you initiate intimacy. Maybe she's overly enthusiastic in a way that feels exaggerated. Maybe she avoids eye contact during certain conversations. Maybe her breathing changes when specific topics arise. These are not courtroom evidence. They are data points. And here is where emotional maturity becomes essential. Do not become obsessive. Do not hyperanalyze every blink. Do not spiral into suspicion over one moment. Instead, observe patterns over time. Patterns are truth. Moments are noise. There is a powerful exercise I teach called baseline recalibration. For 1 week, interact normally. Be calm. Be centered. Do not accuse. Do not test. Simply observe her natural state, then gently reduce your emotional overextension. Stop overgiving, stop overpursuing, stop filling silence with reassurance. Watch what happens. If she moves toward you, if she seeks connection, that tells you something. If she grows colder, more irritated, or more distant, that also tells you something. The key here is not manipulation. It's removing desperation from the equation. Desperation clouds perception. Strength clarifies it. And I want to address something important for my audience over 50. As we age, we often fear abandonment more quietly. We may not admit it, but the thought of starting over feels exhausting. So when our intuition signals danger, we suppress it. We tell ourselves we're overthinking. We blame stress. We blame hormones. We blame anything except the possibility of betrayal. But maturity should bring sharper discernment, not deeper denial. Trusting your perception does not mean accusing someone unfairly. It means honoring your inner alarm system long enough to evaluate it. Now, in the next part, we're going to discuss the fifth sign, the pattern of lateness and shifting priorities. And this is where time itself becomes the revealer. And I want you to prepare yourself because this one requires courage. Now let's move into the fifth sign. Late returns and empty excuses. Time tells a story that words cannot. A woman who chooses you will bend time for you. She'll adjust, rearrange, sacrifice small conveniences, and make herself available because the relationship is a priority. Conversely, a woman who has emotionally or physically shifted her attachment elsewhere will find ways to be absent, and these absences are rarely dramatic at first. They appear in subtle increments. She's running late. Her phone dies mysteriously. Traffic was impossible. A last-minute work obligation pops up. Over time, these minor excuses add up. And what you're left with is a consistent pattern of absence. Here's the psychology behind it. Humans signal priorities through actions, not intentions. Intentions can be rehearsed. Rehearsed excuses can be polished. But actions, how someone allocates their time, energy, and presence, cannot lie over the long term. Every habitual lateness, every repeated missed engagement is a data point in a larger pattern. I once coached a client named Simon in his early 60s who was deeply confused. His partner would consistently arrive home late, cancel plans at the last minute, or forget engagements. Initially, he made allowances, believing she was just busy or stressed, but over time, he noticed the subtle pattern. Her absences clustered around social events he knew she disliked and coincided with times he couldn't be present. The truth became undeniable. Her priorities had shifted, and he had been tolerating the slow erosion of his own time and dignity. Here's the hard logic. Every time you accept flimsy excuses, you teach her that your dignity is negotiable. You're training her to believe your patience is limitless. And when you do this repeatedly, you are essentially surrendering your own agency in the relationship. So what do? Observe the pattern first. Do not interrogate aggressively. State observations calmly. Something as simple as, I noticed you were late again today. I'd like to understand why shifts the responsibility back to her without creating drama. Silence after your statement is your ally. It forces reflection without conflict. Over time, repeated patterns reveal reality more clearly than confrontation ever could. Now, I want you to pause and reflect with me. If you're feeling a knot in your stomach while hearing this, it's not paranoia. It's awareness. Awareness is the first step to regaining strength, clarity, and ultimately dignity. At this point, you may be asking, Mary, what if all these signs are just coincidences? What if I'm overthinking? That is the internal debate every man faces. Here's the truth. Patterns, when observed over time and across multiple signs, rarely lie. If you notice repeated emotional distance, over cleanliness, projection, body tension, and habitual absences, it's not paranoia. It's a consistent narrative being told by behavior. Now let's talk about what you do with this awareness, because recognizing a problem is only the first step. Many men make the mistake of trying harder. More gifts, more affection, more explanations. But here's what research in attachment psychology shows. Overextending yourself in response to emotional withdrawal reinforces the very pattern you're trying to break. You inadvertently reward emotional absence with increased attention. It's the classic push-pull loop. Instead, reclaim your power in 3 practical ways. First, stabilize yourself emotionally. This means no impulsive texts, no emotional outbursts, and no attempts to force reconnection. Ground yourself in your own life. Exercise, hobbies, social connections, anything that reaffirms your value outside of her attention. Second, observe patterns instead of isolated events. Keep a mental log of emotional cues, absences, and intimacy shifts. This isn't about creating a file against her. It's about clarifying reality so you can act from strength, not desperation. Third, test the distance intentionally. Reduce your pursuit subtly and observe her response. Does she seek reconnection or does the gap widen further? The answer is your clarity. The response or lack thereof is your data, not speculation. Now, I want to share a story of clarity and empowerment. A client named James in his late 50s had endured years of subtle emotional betrayal. He loved deeply and had invested decades into a marriage that had quietly shifted. When we applied these strategies, observation, pattern recognition, and intentional pullback, he finally recognized the truth without confrontation. The realization was painful but liberating. He stopped negotiating his dignity and began making decisions from a position of strength. Within months, he rebuilt a life centered on self-respect and clear boundaries. And here's the most important lesson: clarity frees you. It frees you from endless guessing. It frees you from sleepless nights filled with what-ifs. It restores your agency. It allows you to lead your life instead of reacting to uncertainty. So my friend, if you've resonated with these 5 signs, the cold silence of her body, the cleansing ritual, the blame game, the body's subtle truths, and the lateness pattern, take action today. Start by simply observing without anger or accusation. Protect your dignity. Test the patterns. And if you need guidance in mapping this clearly, I encourage you to consider a private strategy session. We can cut through the noise, rebuild your confidence, and give you a clear plan to act from strength, not confusion. If this video is landing for you, please do one thing for me. Hit like, leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences, and share this video with another man who needs clarity. Engagement isn't just about YouTube, it's about creating a community of men who refuse to guess, who choose strength and dignity. Now that we've explored the 5 key signs, let's talk about actionable steps and mindset shifts that transform awareness into empowerment. Because clarity alone isn't enough, you need strategies to protect your dignity, rebuild confidence, and lead your life. No matter what happens in your relationship, first reclaim your emotional space. Emotional overextension is one of the fastest ways men lose clarity. When you constantly chase, plead, or try to read every reaction, your nervous system stays in a loop of anxiety. Here's a practical exercise. Designate specific times to engage deeply with her physically, emotionally, and conversationally. Outside of those times, focus on yourself. Pick up hobbies, engage friends, invest in physical fitness, or simply enjoy quiet reflection. This isn't avoidance, it's recalibration. By consciously limiting overinvestment, you regain clarity and it allows you to observe behavior patterns without emotional distortion. Second, document patterns privately. This is not about suspicion, it's about data. Create a simple journal. Track emotional shifts, unusual behaviors, lateness, or changes in intimacy. Note context, stress, social events, health factors. Over weeks, patterns will emerge clearly. Seeing them in writing removes doubt, reduces the tendency to gaslight yourself, and provides undeniable clarity. Third, reset communication boundaries. Too often, men react defensively to projection or blame. Instead, practice assertive, calm communication. A simple phrase like, "I'm happy to discuss specific issues, but I won't accept being made the villain for something I don't recognize," puts you in control. This communicates dignity and sets psychological boundaries without creating conflict. Fourth, recognize the difference between empathy and self-sacrifice. Empathy allows you to listen without internalizing blame. Self-sacrifice, however, trains others to take your attention for granted. When emotional shifts happen, empathize, but do not overcorrect. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it's strategic. Fifth, strengthen your intuition. One of the most overlooked tools for men over 50 is trusting their own perception. Your experience, life lessons, and relational wisdom have value. If something feels off, honor that feeling. Don't immediately rationalize it away. You may not have the full story, but patterns rarely lie. Let me share an exercise to sharpen this skill. Every evening, reflect on 3 relational observations from your day. Ask, did anything feel unusual? Did I notice emotional shifts? Did my partner behave differently than her baseline? Over time, this builds confidence in your intuitive perception and reduces self-doubt. Sixth, create deliberate distance to test connection. This may feel counterintuitive, but pulling back slightly from constant pursuit allows truth to surface. If she seeks you out, her behavior reinforces connection. If she maintains distance, it's information. Remember, your goal is not punishment, it's clarity. Silence, consistency, and measured observation are more revealing than confrontation. Seventh, focus on your own value system. Over 50, men often tie self-worth to relationships. This is a trap. Reaffirm your purpose, integrity, and autonomy outside of her attention. When you operate from your own center, not her behavior, you maintain dignity regardless of outcomes. Eighth, confront denial gently. Many men prefer confusion to clarity because clarity demands action. Start small. Acknowledge privately what you observe without making accusations. Test reality through measured, calm engagement. Document and reflect. Then decide whether the relationship aligns with your values and expectations. Finally, consider seeking professional guidance when patterns persist or clarity alone feels insufficient. A strategy session like the ones I offer can help map behaviors, set boundaries, and design a plan to reclaim agency in your relationship. There is immense power in moving from speculation to structured action. Before we conclude, I want you to internalize this. Strength is not about controlling her behavior. Strength is about controlling your response. Dignity is not about her love. It's about your self-respect. Clarity is not about suspicion. It's about awareness and choosing action over anxiety.